Hey guys, George here, and today I want to bring you another tips and tactics video about boats. Now, the idea behind that was since we're around D-Day and the world's largest amphibious assault happened around this time, um, I would do a topic that related to amphibious assaults, but unfortunately, the basic rule book, um, I wasn't able to see anything about landing craft in the um, basic rule book. Maybe I'm completely blind. Could they be in chapter G? Because, there they are, landing craft. Holy cow. They're in chapter G, as in George. And that alludes to Rising Sun. It would probably be easier to do landing craft than, um, than boats. But actually not. I see that landing craft has about one, two or three pages, whereas boats and rafts uh, has roughly the same amount of rules. But I guess we got to learn boats before we go on to the big heavies, landing craft. So, with no further ado, let's go on to learning something or a few things about boats and rafts, um, which are in chapter E as an echo. So, what we have here is a small boat with a little engine with 4 MP. We have a large raft, and these are either small boats or pneumatic boats. And they could exist in two different types. They could exist as um, a German assault boat with an inherent driver that automatically has 4 MP. Let's see if we can flip this. Well, what does 123L mean? Oh, this is the change of the size, because you can casualty reduce them. So this is more or less an overview of the rules. It's not a complete picture of the rules. So with German assault boats, they have an inherent driver, um, and that means they can go 4 movement points on the water as opposed to 2 movement points paddled by the passengers. So that's under Echo 5.1 and 5.11. Um, and 5.12 is the next important rule, which stipulates that 1/3 um, of the portage points allowance has to be occupied by crew or by infantry. Otherwise, that boat cannot be paddled, and it would drift and use a random DR to be beached. So if we take a look at our calculator and go for 14, I believe it's fractions rounded down. I could be wrong in that one. Times 0.333333 is so at least 4 or 5 portage points um, have to be used uh, in order for it to be paddled. Now let's take a quick look and see if that is fractions rounded up or fractions rounded down. Um, 5.12. So it doesn't say. Pneumatic boats, large and small rafts, must be occupied by personnel worth at least 1/3 of their listed portage capacity to use that boat's MP. Excluding pneumatic boats, only each SMC equals 1 portage point. Hmm. Interesting. Oh well. Now, um, like a quick overview. So you got your movement points here. The stars here indicate that it's an unarmored vehicle, not necessarily the size of the boat, because they're usually considered to be of ordinary size. Nescafe. A bit more bitter than I'm accustomed to. I might put a little bit of more Splenda in there. So this is a large raft, or a large boat. This is a large raft with two movement points. The M number is the manhandling number, similar to guns, except we'll go into it much later. Units do not need um, to go uh, temporary mobilized, or temporary mobilized to manhandle a boat. So we got a large raft. So and these babies are also important before we go to the large raft. So what happens is if you have three boats, you can flip them to two, as I've done before, to allow for casualty reduction. So I can flip it from a 2 to a 1. And this represents casualty reduction. If a leader breaks or is eliminated, the squads in a boat do not have to take a leader loss morale check or a morale check, for that matter. In order to determine if the support weapons were eliminated, you do a 1DR, and the 1 to 3, all the weapons are good. 4 to 6 are eliminated. Any surviving support weapons are spared, even if they subsequently exceed the boat's portage points. Now, what happens to a boat that has more portage points than it can handle? Does it affect its movement? I haven't researched that yet, and I think I would have to go to the Q&A or do some further research beyond the rule book in order to come up with a good answer. Now, once you are reduced to a two-boat counter, you cannot, let's do that again. Once you're reduced to a two-boat counter, you cannot reduce it to a one-boat counter for casualty reduction. Two-boat counters that suffer casualty reduction, and I'll explain to you how that is done in a while, are simply eliminated or sunk, unless they are beached or in shallow water. And we'll come to that as well a little bit later. Okay, so onto the large raft. That's governed by Echo 5.122. They can be used to carry ordnance with a M number greater than or equal to 10 at a cost of 10 portage points. So similar to trucks that we saw in the last episode, what occurs here, or the second to last video when I did trucks, similar to trucks, when you carry ordnance, you have to keep in mind that the portage point cost incurs a detrimental reduction to the point where almost you cannot carry a gun and the crew in the same carrier or the same truck. So there are the boats and trucks, as on armored vehicles, share somewhat the same rules, or the same theory behind the rules. Now, passengers and support weapons remain out of view in a cloaking box. So this is similar to parachutes and gliders. So they remain in a cloaking box, and you can also carry 4 single-man counters at no portage point cost, and they reappear once a boat is landed. So you can see this guy is really mobile. He can move 1, 2, 3, 4. And this fellow here can move only 2 movement points, so it takes quite a long time to go across. And I believe this is a 40 meters. It represents a radius of about 40 meters. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 24. So 40, times 4. And go 160 meters in the course of about 2 minutes. Oh well. Okay. Overland movement. So with overland movement, you need 1/3 of the boat's MP allowance to carry them, and there is a you have to roll less than the M number, and the only difference being here is that the infantry trying to manhandle a boat do not suffer a temporary mobilization if they fail to do so. So under 5.21, and I'm just going over the salient points. When loading MMC, when loaded, MCs are loaded to 4 movement points. So to load at a cost of 1 movement factor plus cost of crossing a hex side. So let's go to this example here, which is right out of the book, right? So it's 1 to go there, and I believe 2, 3 to get into the boat. It could be wrong. Load at a cost of 1 movement factor plus the cost of crossing the hex side. No cost to enter water. Each remaining movement factor translates into 1/4 of the boat's remaining MP allotment, fractions rounded down. So there is an example in the book, and we can go over it together. So it's on page Echo 11. So a German assault boat is beached on I9, I10 hex side, which is the case here. And you represent the beaching by putting the boat on the hex side where it crosses the land and the water obstacle. Hope everybody can see that, right? And the only way infantry can load into a boat is if it's beached. All right. So the 467 in 8 and 8-1 and H10, which is here, okay, can use 1 movement factor to enter I10, which is this hex here, 1. There you go. And another to load onto the boat. So 1, 2 to there. The infantry unbeaches the boat and uses the remaining 2 MF to expend half the boat's 4 MP. So that's 4 MP. We unbeach the boat, grab them, unbeach the boat, and since the infantry unit has 2 moving factors left, the boat can use half of its MP allowance to go 1, 2. That's pretty easy. The infantry unbeaches the boat and uses about 4 MP so that the boat can moves to I8 and I7. If the boat counter had been a squad size small raft counter, it would have only 1 MP left, which makes sense. So let's put these guys back and replace it by this boat. Notice that this boat has 4 MP, this boat has 2, so subsequently to that, we got 1, 2 to enter the boat, unbeach. Unbeaching doesn't cost anything. And then since the unit expended half its movement factors, the boat has half its movement points left, so it goes boom to there. Makes sense. So now it further goes on to state, now assume the small raft counter is beached on I9, H9. Uh-oh, that sucks. H9, I9, like that. And the infantry are in G10. Okay, let's remove the moves. There it is, G10. The infantry must expend MF to enter H9 in bypass. H9 is here. Yeah. So we enter in bypass, 1, and we can go like this, right? In bypass. And 2 MF to load into the boat. 1 extra MF to descend across each abrupt elevation. Well, yeah, it's abrupt elevation. So 1, 2, 3. Yep. 1 extra MF to descend across abrupt elevation, changing immediate level B10.51, leaving them with only 1 MF. The small raft counter will be unable to move aside from being unbeached during the movement phase because a quarter of 2 equals half, fractions rounded down equals 0 NP. So there you have it. Boom. So all they can do is get unbeached and go entirely into the water obstacle. Ah, that sounds great. So movement phase loading. When loaded MCs, okay, so we went over 5.21, 5.23, 5.22. I kind of overlooked 5.22, and it's a simple rule. And that's where we typically overlook are the simple rules like A.2. A boat may not be manhandled during the advance phase. However, if already beached, it may be loaded onto, excluding guns, and placed into that water hex. So that's interesting. Right, so beaching. Only during the boat's movement phase and advance phase, water level hex must be declared. If beaching wasn't declared, costs 1 additional movement factor movement point. Beached boat is attacked at water level. Abandoned boats only. The beach is only if it rolls a 1 on a small DR on a possible beach tax obligatory. So, if for any reason a boat has been abandoned and it's left to its lonesome self, the only way it can move is by drift. And then if it comes across a beachable hex and you roll a 1d6, you get a 1, it's beached. Otherwise, it continues to drift. So that's what that rule is saying in terms of water movement. Um, and movement in the, let's go to water movement, 5.3. Man boats can move up to their movement point allowance. So this fellow now is in the water. It's his movement phase, so he can move 1, 2 hexes in that direction, or any direction for that matter. Okay? And we have to have at least sufficient infantry in it to be allowed to move, unless it's a German assault boat that has its own inherent firepower, its own inherent driver. Okay, and notice I did not use any MPs to start or stop. Subsequently to that, it's a motion target. Okay, meaning case J applies, which is a +2 DRM on any ordnance to hit. The other thing that's interesting is, let's say we had a Russian squad in this boat. I've never seen situations where both sides had an amphibious um, attack, but let's say there is. According to 5.3, this Russian squad in this boat does not represent an obstacle to Mayer and his infantry in their boats, and they can conceivably go 1, 2. And the other thing that I'm going to reiterate is if you end up going here and staying there during the advanced phase and the close combat phase, you're in CC. However, you're never locked in melee. So that's really something interesting to know about with the boat rules. I'm going a little bit all over the place, but what I want here to do is go into an overview, give you some play examples, and then hopefully you guys will not be intimidated to start an amphibious assault scenario, and you can go uh, start a scenario with a friend and do some rulebook diving or some rulebook reading beforehand, and you'll enjoy a good game of Advanced Squad Leader. So multiple boats in the same hex suffer defensive disadvantages. That's under 5.5 and 5.2 in the same chapter. And unloading uh, costs no additional MF to unload. And if there is an enemy on the hex that you want to unload, you end up having to move in the advanced phase. So let's say this unit has moved here ultimately, and this fellow is here. In order to unload into hex L4, Mayor can only do so in the advanced phase, and then subsequent to that, they're in close combat. Now, in the actual rulebook, they give you an example where this situation occurs. Let's put Mayor on his side of the board. Actually, it's not his side of the board, but for all intents and purposes, it is for now. So they give you this a situation where a small raft counter in 8JJ6, here you go. This is a small raft counter. Now you don't see the infantry there, and I just had the infantry on the boats, which is not supposed to be the case because they should be in a cloaking box. So, what the heck. So let's pretend for all intents and purposes that there's a 467 in this boat, that this guy is in the cloaking box, okay? So HA6, I'm there, uses 1 MP and consequently 2 of its passengers 4 MF to enter J5. And beaches on J4, J5. Hex side. The passengers may not be unloaded because they lack the necessary MF to move to a higher elevation and cross the hedge. However, they may do so in the advanced phase. So why is that? It's because they're going to a higher level, so that would be 2 plus 1 over the hedge, you make it 3. But they don't have that movement, those movement factors allowed to them because they already used 2 MF to go into J5. So it would cost them 3 movement factors, but they only had 2 remaining. So that's what the example on page E11, second column, after 5.32 kind of says. Pushing and towing boats, even with other boats, is not applicable. So suppose you want to bring a boat over. This boat here in M9 is manned and can continue to move. You cannot tie a rope and push or pull the other one behind it. Them's the rules, guys. Let's put this guy back. Okay. Untrained. So, untrained. So if an SSR, special scenario rule, specifies that a unit is untrained to paddle boats, they need to roll a special DR, a small 1d6. So suppose these fellows are untrained and they're there. I roll a 1d6. 6 means I can't move for that turn. Right? If I roll again, roll the 1, I can move my 2 movement points. 2 movement points equals 4 movement factors for the squad. And that is because the relationship between movement points and movement factors is that 1 movement factor equals a quarter of the boat's movement points. That's how it works. And I guess you've got to put leaders aside because it appears, based on the examples, that the leader modifier or the leader benefit for 6 movement factors does not apply in this case. But it doesn't explicitly say so, and I'm not aware of any Q&A that says otherwise. So if you guys want to do the research and let me know, I'm more than welcome to listen to you guys with respect to that. Okay, so a 5, however, if you roll a 5, you end up being able to move half of the movement points. So 5 and 6 are bad for untrained passengers that don't know how to roll a boat. Remarkably enough, I had watched enough videos to learn how to paddle a canoe, and when I went to a park to rent one, I did fairly well. And then the fellow there that saw me get into the canoe and paddle away thought I was lying about not being an experienced canoer. Now, what kind of we turn to 5.4, and as passengers, what kind of weapons can be fired from a boat? Well, only small arms fire and LMGs can. So in this case, if this fellow was a passenger in one of these 4 boats, they would be able to fire their LMG, but Schultz here with his MMG cannot possibly fire it. So here we got 13 movement points, and in addition to the unit and the MMG, you can also load up to 4 single-man counters on a boat counter of this magnitude, and be okay. Now here, 3 portage points, and a squad, I believe, is 10. This unit here can only carry a half squad, in theory, with 3 portage points. Not even. Yeah, according to transporting personnel in D6.1, a half squad would be 5 portage points. A squad equals 10 portage points. So there's not much this boat can carry. Unless you can't even put an MMG on it and what, just let it go and drift? Yeah, we have epiphanies while going through these rule summaries. So we covered an example of unloading. Stacking, there are stacking disadvantages, as I kind of alluded to before, and they're in 5.5 and 5.52. There's no additional MF to unload. Advanced phase, if enemy is on the other location, we went on to that. No towing. Untrained. Fire from a boat, we just covered that. Kind of. So beached, if the boat is beached and this unit wants to fire from that boat, it's half. And when you are in motion along the water obstacles, it can be a quarter, and then subsequently halved again for firing during the advancing fire phase. Now, fire against boats. So fire against boats is covered under 3 subsections of the rules, more or less. And you have non-ordnance and area target type attacks versus boats in the water, as opposed to boats that are beached or on land. And then you have ordnance fire on the boats. So this would be an example of ordnance fire, and this would be an example of non-ordnance fire. And non-ordnance fire includes OBA attacks. So according to 5.5, all non-ordnance including OBA and area target type hits versus a non-beached boat in water obstacles have their firepower halved or quartered for area target type hits and are resolved on the IFT's vehicle star type vehicle line. So um, let me pull out the IFT. Okay, so here's the one I created. Um, no disrespect intended to Neil's charts, but what I like here is I borrowed the one in the back of the book and try to make the notes more clear because when you're dealing with chapter B as in Bravo, you're also dealing with certain attacks that can create fires and create shell holes. And this is a good reminder of what can occur. And then, as you can see here, for example, um, what you end up having here is the consequences of a 18 mine. So everything's color coded. And when I checked it according to the accessibility rules in Excel, um, it's still, there's much to be desired, but I can't stray too far from the original. Um, so I'm going to kind of work on it and see what I can do in order to make it more accessible for people that, um, you know, have vision impairments and well, need reading glasses like I do now in order to play the game. And look, I also have a little mini magnifying glass these days. Back in the old days, before my cataract surgery, I was able to see fine detail information up close perfectly. I was very myopic and not farsighted at all. Now the opposite is true. Old age. So let's go over non-ordnance area and area target type attacks versus boats in the water. So basically, when you got a boat attack, you're not going to see who's in the boat because the infantry will be in a cloaking box off to the side of your board, right? We've got these boys in here in the water now. They're no longer beached. Now, when we look at this line here, um, it will determine whether you hit the boat or not, or caused any damage to the boat or not. So keep in mind that all non-ordnance fire is considered to be um, for boats in the water halved. So this fellow here is 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes away, and he would be halved. So his attack would be on the 4 table, in the 2 table. So on the 2 table is here. He needs a 4 or less to do any damage to the boat. Now, um, if these two fellows fire grouped, they would actually attack the boat on the 4 table. So if we go to the 4 table and take a look at the star line, now we need a 5 or less. So let's roll and see what we can come up with here. Let's roll on the IFT on the 4 table. These two guys are fire grouping, they're defensive firing. It's in the defensive fire, not in the movement phase. Let's roll. We rolled an 11. Holy Columbus. This guy's scot-free. Now, if we rolled a 4, then what would happen was a number up to the highest KIA number in that column would be eliminated. So let's pretend that we did roll a let's see, a 4, which is 1 less than we needed. Right? The highest KIA number is actually 2 KIA if you take 0 or less there. So if there were 2 boats in that hex, both boats would sink, and we'll cover sinking later. If we rolled the exact number of if we roll the exact number, only one vehicle would suffer a casualty reduction, with no MC leader loss morale check for the survivors. Now, you have to keep in mind the defensive fire principles. If only one unit was moving during that phase, then only one unit would be affected, the unit expending movement points. Okay, and both passengers suffer the same fate as their boat. If their boat is eliminated, so are the passengers. There's no crew survival or any of that stuff. Now, against beach targets, um, so let's put them back on the beaches. They're beached. Their In that case, their fire would be resolved in the same manner as on the um, uh, star type line, star vehicle line, with no other, with full IFT effects and DRs. Um, so more or less the same way as you would treat a truck as a target. So it's good to know trucks and all unarmored vehicles. So with respect to ordnance fire versus boats, okay, um, unless the boat is beached, okay, the +2 applies uh, because boats are considered to be in motion, always being paddled across. You cannot apply heat or attack it with an anti-tank rifle, and you're always resolving on the hull down uh, uh, target type unless you are attacking at a height advantage or with an aircraft. And vehicle overstocking penalties do apply. Now, if you hit a boat using the vehicle target type or the infantry target type, it's considered sunk. What happens to sunk boats? Unless it's sunk in shallow water or it's beached, then all the support weapons and passengers are eliminated. If it's if it's if it does sink in shallow water, uh, the passengers become um, fording infantry and are subject to hazardous movement. In addition, they're considered to be in -1 terrain. So in order to go on land, they would have to incur penalty for um, the penalty for going to higher elevation. So that's more or less what it says in 5.31 and 5.32. So at no time, with respect to Berserk units under 5.54, let's say this unit became Berserk, and you do this way. What the heck? Don't alarm. No! Let's go to battle hardening and battle harden again. Now let's Berserk him now. There you go. Berserk. Boom. He's Berserk. He can't enter the boat. Nor can he swim across. Could be wrong about that one. So he can't, a Berserk unit cannot enter a boat, and nor can a unit as a passenger in a boat um, become Berserk because morale checks and task checks are ignored. And if you incur a sniper attack on a boat, that would result in breaking the unit, its casualty reduced instead. So traveling in boats can be deadly. And the last thing that you need to know about boats is there is close combat. So again, back in the example that I showed you before, where one boat is on top of the other, there are no infantry units in these boats, but there would be, and they are off board in the cloaking box. You could conceivably end up in a close combat situation, the attacker incurs a +2 DRM to the attack, -2 to defend, and they're never locked in melee. And the other thing you can do is attempt to capture a boat by applying, I guess, the capture detrimental DRM, and subsequently capturing the boat and its passengers. You can eliminate the passengers and keep the boat. And why would you want to do that? I don't see why you'd want to do that, because once the boat is empty of passengers, if nobody's in the boat and you cannot load onto the boat that's in the water, you'd have to leave it drift around. So I hope I summarized these rules well, and I hope everyone, including myself, learned a lot. And just thinking out loud and talking about the rules kind of helps. I wish I could have gone into a bigger example, but I kind of want to play with an experienced player on an amphibious assault scenario before I give anybody more info with respect to boats. I kind of find it interesting. I also maybe would like to do a weekend review, but I'll put it aside for now and just stop ranting for now. And I'd like to also address a couple of other things. I did try and get a streaming channel up and running on Discord, and due to technical difficulties, I think I'm just going to record some video and upload it later if everybody is interested. Now, somebody did point out to me that the name that I used may not have been very appropriate because it's associated with an undesirable group, and I apologize if I offended anyone. Basically, I wasn't aware that these type of groups exist, and if I could have conceivably tried to Google the name, but no, I couldn't imagine anything to that effect. So we renamed the channel, and it's right here. I'm going to share the link with you guys. So now we call it Stroomfront Saturday, and Stroom is short for Stroomfakia in Greek, which means Smurfs. There you go. So it's the Smurf Saturday channel, and I'm going to try and get it organized with some participants. Not too many people are aware of it already, and what I will do is, with the participants' consent, record it and then upload it later to avoid any technical issues. Yep. So that was my little take on boats, and I shall provide you another tips and tactics next week that I think you will find interesting. And with that said, I'd like to thank you for viewing this video and all the others. I'd like to thank you for subscribing and spreading the word about this channel. And what else can I say? Well, what I can say is I hope you enjoy playing Advanced Squad Leader. And see you next time. I do have some interesting videos planned in the near future. Take care.